Hey everybody, what's up? My name is Monsieur Valois. I'm so stoked that you can join me today for a detailed glance at the International Baccalaureate Group 2 Language Ab Initio course. I'll be simplifying everything you need to know so that after the 2 years, you can rock your assessments and score my favorite number, perfect 7. All right, now just before we begin, it's important for me to tell you that I don't work for the IB. I've been an IB French teacher for 5 years now, but nothing can replace the guide and nothing can replace the hours in the classroom with your teacher, okay? So I'm just here to support students and teachers with a general understanding of what's expected, share a few of my personal tips off of my experience in working with students over the years. So let's get going. As you know, this is a 2-year beginner level language acquisition course, and you would be expected to learn how to speak, how to listen, how to read and write the language of study at a basic level. So whether it be French, whether it be Spanish, Arabic, Japanese, whatever language you've chosen, those are the objectives. And whatever the language, you're going to be introduced to the course themes, okay, which are kind of like course units, which will help you expand your vocabulary, your communication skills, and expand your knowledge of the cultural diversity of this target language and culture. Each theme is going to have a variety of topics. They can be wide-ranging. They are, if we start with the first theme of identities, okay, this theme is going to cover topics such as self-expression, what makes you unique, personal relationships, physical well-being. The second course theme is experiences, and possible topics would include your daily routine, festivals, what kinds of events you enjoy to go to, different careers. Number 3, human ingenuity. Looking at things like technology, looking at creativity, media, communication, transportation, human structures. Then we have our 4th course theme, which is social organization. And this unit is going to be looking at topics like how your school, neighborhood, or your workplace are organized, different social issues. We talk about marginalization in society. And lastly, the 5th and final course theme, which is sharing the planet. This would involve topics like sustainability or environmental issues, international issues, physical geography, and so forth. So those units, or those themes, I should say, those course themes are going to be taught over the 2 years. And how are you going to study these? You're going to become familiar with a bunch of different texts, and they're divided into 3 broad categories, okay? The first one are personal texts. So these would be coming from you, personal. This could be entries in your diary, it could be emails, postcards to friends. So it's a little bit more informal, right? Then we have our second category, which are professional texts. These are slightly more formal because they would be common in places like businesses or organizations. So you're looking at instructions or menus, making a CV, a book of recipes. Okay, these are pro, they're not informal. So you'd have to use a more serious tone. And then lastly, we have our third group, which are mass media texts. So these are products that are communicated to the larger audiences. So including on television or on the internet, films, flyers, podcasts, web pages, and so forth. Let's move on to the big elephant in the room, the assessments. If we start with paper 1, which is known as paper fun, is based on the student's ability to demonstrate productive skills in the form of written responses. This is your writing. This is going to test your writing. You'll be given 1 hour to complete the assessment, which will represent 25% of your grade. During paper 1, you're going to be presented with 3 opportunities of making written responses. Each one is going to be based on a different course theme and might be a different kind of text, personal, professional, or mass media. You're going to be asked to respond to 2 of them. Not all 3, 2 of the 3, and each of these responses will require you to write between 70 to 150 words, which is totally doable. You got this. So I'm going to give you a few examples. Let's say a first example. We're using the course theme on experiences, and the prompt is saying that you are studying Portuguese and you're asked to send a postcard back home to your friends while you are visiting the Rio Carnival. This would be an example of a personal text, right? Because you're going to be writing something personal to your friends, having a great time here, people are having fun, I'm on the beach. It's not too serious, it's more informal, so the tone can be light. The second example I want to use is, let's say we're using a course theme of sharing the planet. And the prompt is going to say, you You want to organize a recycling program at your school. So you need to write a formal letter to your school's principal. Be aware, if this is your audience, your school principal, it's more of a formal tone. So you would want to use appropriate language and be polite. Third example, if we use the course theme of identities, you are a volunteer at a local senior's residence and the head nurse knows that you're someone who's super active and athletic, and she realizes that you can help communicate information to the residents there. She asks you to put together a brochure in which you list 5 different healthy activities that would lead to a healthier lifestyle. Since your brochure will be shared with each dwelling in the building, then technically it's a mass media product. And since you're talking to older people, you really gotta know your audience, right? If you're talking to older people, you're gonna say, eat your vegetables, go for light walks. You're not gonna recommend them to go wakeboarding or bouldering. Those are some examples of how the course themes are gonna be involved in paper 1 and the different written response options, and how each one is going to ask you to respond in a different kind of text. Now let's get to the assessment criteria. You need to know this. Check out the guide. That's where it is in detail. In general, you're going to be evaluated by 3 different criteria. First one is language. That's criterion A. So you got to make sure you're using appropriate vocabulary in there. Your grammar is used pretty effectively and you're showing off them skills. And also, if you do have some mistakes, they're not really interfering with the message that you're trying to get across. Okay, criterion B, the message, stay relevant. Don't talk about anything unrelated. I mean, you only have 70 to 150 words. You have to make them count. So your ideas need to be well developed in there. Also, add details and examples, and your response should have a logical flow. So depending on the kind of text it is, of course, you want to start with a greeting or some kind of introduction, and end with a goodbye or a conclusion. The last criterion, C, is conceptual understanding. This means that you are understanding what text type you should have used. Okay, you're using the right tone and conventions, and you're considering the context, the purpose of the written response, and who your audience is. Let's get into Monsieur Valois' tips for how to succeed paper 1. Criterion A, learn your verbs. Make sure that you know the 25 most commonly used verbs in your target language. So doesn't matter what language it is, you want to know how to say to walk, you want to know how to say to eat, to think, to read. These you got to have under your belt. And not only that, you should be able to express yourself in the past, present, and future. So if you're having difficulties with those, find an online conjugation tool. That will be your help. That will be a key to your success, and just remember to memorize these verbs. Tip 2, in criterion B for the message, make sure you've studied the vocabulary for each of the course themes, okay? Your ability to draw on key words is going to be so useful and helpful for you during this assessment, and you're going to look so smart. Criterion C, conceptual understanding. Best case scenario, you will have already practiced a variety of these kinds of responses in different kinds of classes and even in your life. You want to be well prepared over these 2 years, but if you haven't covered all the text types, just remember, a menu is going to look similar in almost every language. Odds are you've already ordered from a menu, you've already written a personal letter, you've read a blog post before, so you know what you're talking about. Employ that awareness in the task. Now let's get into paper 2. Paper 2 is also part of the external process, and it's entirely about your ability to understand receptive skills, like reading and listening. It's going to last for 1 hour and 45 minutes, and both the listening and reading components are going to make up 25% of your final grade. That's 50% of your final grade. It goes without saying that the topics and the content presented in the listening and reading assessments are going to be linked to the course themes and employ the personal, professional, and mass media text types. The reading and listening assessments are each going to contain 3 passages, so 6 in total. For each, you're going to be required to answer questions that are basically going to include multiple choice, true or false, short answers, mix and match questions, and choosing the correct synonym or antonym for certain words found within the passage. You're not going to be required to answer a big, long response. That you already did in paper 1, so you don't need to do it in paper 2. And important to know going into paper 2, you will not have to have memorized facts going into it or specific topics from any of the course themes. The passages themselves are going to contain all the facts and information on the topics that you need to be able to answer in that assessment. Monsieur Valois' tips for succeeding paper 2 coming at you. How do you prepare for something you might not have covered during your class time? Well, folks, make sure to expose yourself over your 2-year time to different media in the target language that would involve you actively listening, practicing that skill of listening to the content. So I always tell my French students, do not be a stale baguette. Go out there and find an interesting podcast. There's got to be one about a topic out there that you like. Stream a movie in the target language, put the subtitles on if you want. You don't need to, but you can. If you're interested in current events, find a news clip in that language also, and connect the images to what you're being told, what you're hearing in the newscast. Also, don't be shy to pause the film or the news clip and repeat what you're hearing. This is going to help you practice your pronunciation, which is super, super valuable in going into your internal assessment. Speaking of which, the internal assessment. This has always been my favorite assessment because it requires me as the teacher to be more involved. The IA is basically testing your interactive skills in the form of oral assessment. It's going to last between 7 and 10 minutes. It's going to be worth 25% of your grade. And although it's internally assessed by your teacher, it's going to be sent off to the IB for an external moderation as well. It's broken down into 3 tasks. The very first task requires you, the student, to present individually about a visual stimulus. What's a visual stimulus? I'll tell you in just a sec, but it's basically a photo or an illustration. It could be an ad or a poster. So you're going to be presented with 2 visual stimuli, and each of them are going to be labeled to which theme it relates. So for instance, if there's an image or an illustration showing a family enjoying a nice picnic, it could probably be labeled as experiences. So you're going to see 2 of these visual stimuli. Take one of them. You choose this one, and then you're going to be given 15 minutes to think, jot down some notes. You're going to have a maximum of 10 bullet points, so you can't be loading up whole paragraphs. But you're going to take that time also to run through your mind how you're going to say it. You're going to practice speaking it, basically. You're going to focus entirely on describing what you see in the visual stimulus and how it relates to the course theme and the target culture. Once these 15 minutes are up, it's going to be time for you to present to your teacher over the course of 1 to 2 minutes. The second task. The second task requires you to interact with the teacher in a one-on-one conversation. You're going to be talking about that same visual stimulus. Your teacher's going to be asking you all kinds of open-ended questions, asking you to clarify what you presented, any other questions that might relate to the image, including how it relates to the theme, perhaps it relates to different topics during class. The teacher can also ask for connections to the target culture and also to your other cultural experiences. It's going to last between 3 to 4 minutes. So make sure you know a thing or two about the target culture. Third task. Now that you've presented on the stimulus and answered questions related to it, the third task is going to require you to answer questions and engage in a general discussion with your teacher, who will be asking you questions based on at least one additional course theme. So we talked about the stimulus, then your teacher is going to ask you different questions based off of one of the other course themes studied during the year. So these are going to be open-ended questions, again, about connections to the target culture, to your own culture, maybe bring in some topics from the year, and it will last 3 to 4 minutes as well. Then you're going to be evaluated, right? Let's check out the criteria. The first is language. You've used a varied vocab. You're using great grammar. You're showing off them skills. Remember that. You only made a few minor mistakes in your communication, and it's not impeding with understanding what the message is. And your pronunciation and intonation are on point. They're clear and they're coherent. The next criterion is the message. This one, B1, is based entirely on the visual stimulus. It's going to be your descriptions and personal interpretations were great. You've made some links to the target culture. You're laughing. The next one, B2, which is the message. This is going to be also on the second task, the conversation component. Your responses are going to be consistently appropriate and developed. Your personal interpretations are present, and attempts are made to engage the teacher in the conversation. Whoa, yes, you need to engage the teacher. You can't just be sitting back answering all these questions. You also have to be able to show some dynamicism. Lastly, the last criterion, communication. Your responses gotta be in the target language. Duh. And demonstrate the understanding that you have of that language. Make sure that your participation is sustained the whole time. So you're not just gonna be like saying, what, you gotta be focused. Here are Monsieur Valois' tips to succeed and destroy your internal assessment. First, and most importantly, stay calm, okay? Be cool, be confident, be casual, okay? You got this, remember that. Then, know how to say foreground, middle ground, and background. That will help you be able to identify so many different things you see in the picture. Next, know your colors. You can use that. You only got 1 to 2 minutes to speak. You can use up a lot of that time also, and valuable time describing things that you see based off of what color they are in the image. Also, say what you think. What emotions seem to be present in the image? What's the tone? Why are things the way they are in the image? Next, the more inferences you can make to the target culture and international mindedness, man, the better. The IB is gonna love you. Let's look at a quick example here of a visual stimulus, and let's say you're learning Japanese and the teacher presents you the following visual stimulus. It's a scene of the Tokyo Metro. Just below the image, it's going to be labeled human ingenuity. That's your course theme. So what could you present on? Again, like I said in my tips, right? What's going on in the foreground? What's going on in the middle ground and in the background? What colors do you see? You know, what colors are the advertisements? What color are the clothing of the passengers? Maybe you could discuss what it seems like people are doing. You know, where are people going? What expressions do they have? What's the mood? Could you make a suggestion about what time of day it is? Maybe you can make a reference here to the theme of human ingenuity by discussing transportation in urban centers. Maybe there's evidence of advanced technology, and then you can kind of link it to some topics that you learned from the course, and then you'll be well prepared also for what your teacher's going to ask you in the second task. You could also maybe make a reference to the target culture by discussing how the language in the advertisements appears to be Japanese, how things seem to be very organized, how it seems safe on the metro system. Okay, these are just some examples. And so with these tips, these examples, and you can see how quickly 1 to 2 minutes are actually going to be flying by. Okay, so there we have it, guys and girls. That's the IB Ab Initio course, and follow my tips so that you can absolutely crush the assessments and get that 7. Also, to support your learning, remember, there have never been more online resources available as there are nowadays, okay? So become independent. Go out there and self-teach yourself. This is the point of learning the language, right? So you can go out into the world and shine. So I hope this was worth your time. If you found this video useful, please share with your fellow students, share it with your friends, share it with your teacher. Feel free to leave a comment or ask a question below. And make sure to subscribe, as I'll also be posting some tips for the IB, Language B, SL, and HL courses, the AP, French Language and Culture class as well. And for anybody here learning French, I'll be soon sharing lots of lessons to help you improve your skills so that you can push your French up to the next level. Okay? Merci beaucoup and thank you.